bleed green? Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go!
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go! Let's go! Go!
And a good football Friday morning. Yes, we can call it a football Friday because I watched football yesterday for about 5 hours. Been a while since we actually saw people on the football field. I don't know if you can actually. Well, I guess
you didn't watch football. You didn't watch
the
football.
Coach has got the football in his hands and he's directing them back, forward, left. That's about the extent of the actual football. To play football, you need a football, and there wasn't a whole lot of footballs out there, but it was guys on a football field running around and moving themselves up and down draft charts. So it was a quasi football. Let's go with quasi football Friday here on Birds 365. Mac, McMullen, and McDonald here to hang with you. And yes, I wasn't in front of the TV at 3:00 when it started, but I knew I hit record before I ever got going with my day. So I got back to it shortly thereafter and then watched basically all 5 hours, a little fast forwarding through. But it was nice to get football back on my television, which I hadn't had in several weeks. Defensive bigs, Johnny Mack. And yes, the Eagles are in need of defensive bigs, be it inside the defensive line. Probably not a great need. Outside the defensive line on the edge could become an even bigger need. And linebacker, which we know they almost always need, but they don't always prioritize. What jumped out at you when you watched some combine action yesterday?
Well, I didn't watch much of it. I gotta, full disclosure, I'm not as big a fan as the combine as you are. I was mainly writing and doing stuff, and I had it on the NFL Plus in the background. But yeah, I'm not we talked to Randy Mueller yesterday, and the measurables aren't as important, I think, as people think, unless you get those outliers. Occasionally you get somebody who jumps off the page, and then you kind of go back to the film and see, hey, did we miss something with this guy? That type of thing. But I guess, after talking to Rick Saratelli yesterday, I think he ended up on Chop Robinson, a prospect you and I don't necessarily like at 22, but he helped himself, as Penn State players typically do. They have a reputation for testing very well, and he certainly did. So I think that's a name you got to put in the mix pretty seriously at 22 for the Eagles. We'll see if they fall for that. And hey, they did last year with Nolan Smith at 30. I mean, that's one of the reasons, because he was a tremendous athlete, tremendous tester. And I think Chop ran a 4.48 in the 40, so a lot of hype to that. And 254, I think he weighed in, so a little bit more size too, to be able to run that fast. So it is pretty impressive. And that would be the name, since I was focused on the Eagles and Rick had put it in the back of my mind. And that all depends on Hassan Reddick and what happens, and we'll see. But if the Eagles do trade Hassan Reddick, they're going to have to seriously consider an edge rusher at 22, and that was the name that popped out to me.
It was the name that grabbed the most attention because he ran the fastest time. 4.48 is fast. That's really fast. They had one graphic, I guess you'd call it a graphic video, where they show some of the top rushers and the time that they ran in the 40 on the screen, and you can see each of them where they would have finished up at a specific spot, and Chop Robinson was on the line at 4.48. Last year's defensive rookie of the year, the kid from who won? I know
Will Anderson.
Will Anderson was a solid couple strides behind him. And last year's defense play, Nick Bosa, not even close. Bosa ran like a 4.7 something.
Yeah.
And that didn't take him out of being the good on the 49ers for not letting that overplay their hand in selecting Nick Bosa when they did. You could see how fast, like one of the fastest edge times in the history of the combine. And I knew he was going to do it. Like you said, when we had Ricky on yesterday, I asked who's the guy who could really jump off the screen and make a name for it. He said Chop Robinson. Yeah, he had run that fast all year long with all the next gen stats that they have and the ability to get times on guys while playing in games. Knew he was going to put up a big number, and he absolutely did. So more power to him. There's speed, John. There's track speed, and then there's football speed. And I think his track speed is off the charts great. I'm not sure his football speed is as great as it does. The two don't seem to match up to me. I'm not telling you that I think the guy's going to be a bust, but if the Eagles take him at number 22, they could be looking at 2 years in a row of taking a guy on the edge whose track numbers outdo his football numbers. And I hope that's not the case with the Eagles this year.
Yeah, well, you brought up Nick Bosa, and that's a good name because that's the reigning defensive player of the year,
Right.
Who arguably, derailed the Eagles season, at least if you believe what he says. But, how many times you got to run 40 yards playing edge rusher in the NFL? Sometimes you do with these crazy quarterbacks, but very rarely, and that's not going to be a meaningful part of the game. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we were talking about with Randy yesterday. It's great. You gotta hit a base level, to play in this league. You got to be a good athlete, but because you're a good athlete doesn't mean you're a good football player. Now, Chop's a good football player. And what are we talking? Worst case scenario, or bridge pick for him? And I think that's out the window. And by bridge pick, I mean end of first, early second round at the bare minimum. And that's if he tested poorly. Now that he tested well, I'm pretty confident he's going to go in the first round. But I think 20 to 32 is the range he's going to be in. And yeah, I don't think much changed from that standpoint. I don't, there are bad teams. There are bad organizations. There are teams that make bad decisions all the time. And I'm not saying it would be a bad decision. And then there are more judicious teams who put this stuff in its proper place. And over the years, now that they have so much more data, it's becoming more and more difficult to get fooled. So yeah, I wouldn't, but it's what we're talking about now because it's what's going on. But I don't think it's, again, medical testing. There's a big story about Caleb Williams. Medical testing by far the most important part of the combine. But you can't put that on TV. What are we going to look at? A doctor hitting some? I mean, what are we? So you throw everybody out there. They run at 40. We talk about it, but I don't think it changes the landscape that drastically.
I do. I think it does change not drastically, but I think it changes the landscape. Like you said, I would have thought Chop Robinson late first rounder. Now he's probably going to be right in that Eagles zone, may even be off the board by the time Eagles might not even get a shot at him. He may be gone by the time they pick. And I'm saying that won't bother me because I'm not sure that he's good enough. I'm a Jared Verse guy. have been all year with the season he had at Florida State after transferring from the powerhouse that is the State University of New York at Albany. And he did not disappoint either. He ran one of the fastest times, not as fast as Chop Robinson, a little bit bigger, I think a little bit more tested, a little bit more of a football player. That's the guy I'm hoping for. I think there's a good chance that he too could be off the board by the time the Eagles go at 22. If before the draft Hassan Reddick is elsewhere, and free agency will have certainly started, and most of the major names will have come off the board by the time the draft rolls around. It could be a need for the Eagles, or it could be a major need for the Eagles with Howie Roseman if he targets one. And I think Robinson is one name versus another. I think Latu should be a name as well because he really does have true football speed and bend off the edge. The thing that scares me about him is when a guy has been forced to medically retire, which he did. He medically retired and then had a comeback, transferred to UCLA. It was off the charts, great for the Bruins this year. That is a little bit of a red flag for me. Those are the three defensive ends that I think you need to be looking at. Would Robinson be aggressive enough to trade up for one of them?
Well, that's the thing. When you say, will he target an edge rusher? No, he won't target an edge rusher, but he'll target a player. And a lot of names we've talked about.
If that player is an edge rusher, then he's targeting an edge rusher.
Well, that's what I mean. But he's not going to, in other words, he's not going to take those three players and say, I need an edge rusher. And if two of them are off the board and the third one's there, but I don't like him that much, he's not going to go take an edge rusher. That's what I mean by that. Okay. So, it could be Quinyon Mitchell. Everybody talks about a cornerback. As a guy who you're probably going to have to trade up to get if you want to get him. So he does that all the time. He's done it recently. He did it with Devontae Smith. He did it with Jordan Davis. He did it last year with Jalen Carter, even though he probably didn't have to be honest, but didn't hurt. And you don't want to risk it. He does it all the time. So if one of those players, and it could be Quinyon Mitchell, it could be one of the edge rushers, it could be somebody else that we're not thinking of. It could be one of the tackles that we talked about that he thinks is so much better than everybody else. You might have to go up and get him. So it could go in a lot of different directions, but yeah, you're not going to target a specific position. He's going to target a specific player. And that obviously depends on, and you brought up some of the concerns, and that's happened in the past when people say, how do you pass on DK Metcalf? Well, they had, like a lot of teams, they had medical concerns and he was red flagged, and they weren't going to consider him until day 3 of the draft. So they turned out to be wrong. And so did a lot of other NFL teams because they flagged him as well. Mm-hmm. And he stayed healthy. Nothing's perfect. It's not. If it were a science and it was easy, nobody would make mistakes. But it all factors into it.
And the guy that kind of jumped out for me yesterday, and we certainly know it here in Philadelphia, he's probably still, even 20 years after the fact, the guy that people think about first when the phrase Combine Warrior is used. That's Mike McMullen. He was not thought to be a first-round draft pick. He went to Indianapolis and put up numbers that no one expected, and some didn't even believe after the fact. He was that impressive in the Combine, and the Eagles were the one who ended up biting, and they drafted him in the first round. McMullen wasn't terrible.
No,
he wasn't a bust.
No,
like
he was a good
some
player.
People like to. Oh, what a bust Mike McMullen was. He wasn't a bust. He just didn't play up to the level of where he was drafted in the first round. But for whatever reason, and maybe it's just a Philly thing, and I'm guilty of playing into it, that he's the guy who people point to. And I'm talking like you could hear somebody on Good Morning Football and the NFL. Oh, you know, I picked Mike McMullen.
Yeah.
Even 20 years after, it's still part of it. I hope I didn't see Mike McMullen yesterday. You said you didn't watch much. I had knew of the guy's name, hadn't watched him play all that much, but Braden Fisk,
Yeah, he had
defensive tackle.
yeah,
Holy mackerel!
there's a guy named Kent Lee Platt. For those who want to follow him on Twitter, it's at MathBomb on X, and he does something called the relative athletic score. And this is what I was talking about for all the data they have now. You go back to Mike McMullen. Everybody goes back to Mike McMullen, right? Everybody. And that was like mid 90s. I'd have to look it up.
It's over 20 years. I know.
Yeah.
Is it 30? We might be sneaking up on 30. You might be right.
95. So yeah, we're sneaking up on
almost 30 years.
So we're sneaking up on 30 years. Number one, obviously, Jeffrey Lurie wasn't even here. He was right before him, right? Yeah. So completely different regime. How many different coaches? How many different? Even though Howie's been here for a long time, he doesn't go back to 95. Completely different regime. You have that 29 years of data. 20. Where again, when I bring up Kent Lee Platt and you bring up Braden Fisk, and he's looking at all these players and comparing Braden Fisk to all these players over the years, and he tested off the charts. I mean, everything. And the last guy to do it was Ed Oliver, who's become a pretty good player in Buffalo. I thought he was going to be better because he was so dumb, but he hasn't been quite as good.
He's better than Mamula.
Yes, he's a good player. Don't get me wrong, but I thought he was going to be really good. Is all I'm saying. I thought he was going to be dominant, and it hasn't worked out to that degree. But he's been a really, really solid player, and he's still a very good player. And he's so 99.7% of a possible, obviously 100. So he ranked number 6 out of the 1,620 defensive tackles from 87 to 2024. That's how far back he goes. Number 6 of that particular number. I just lost it. What did I give you? Number 6 of 1,600
and change.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah,
I bet you Braden Fisk isn't going to be the 6th best defensive tackle over that range.
That's why I brought his name up, John. When you saw the numbers, you saw what he did. It was like, wow, how do I not know about this guy? He is so much better. He ran, and not just because it's a stopwatch, but he just looked faster than everybody. You watch enough of this crap, like I always do, you could actually. It's the old eye test, and I really do believe I could tell by my eye test. If I blocked the time at the bottom of the screen, I could tell you, yeah, that guy was really fast. And I saw it with Fisk. I said, how do I not know more about this guy? So I had to look him up. I think he's got a chance to be a nice player. He's off what he did in college. He's not a first-round draft pick.
Yeah.
But he might have played himself into the first round by not only having a good day at the combine, but historically, John McMullen just told me, 6th best out of 1,600 measured at that position.
99.7 percentile.
Yeah,
That's
how do you
good.
not take a guy who's 99.7 percentile in the first round?
I see. I wouldn't.
You
take
shouldn't.
him.
You shouldn't. But I'm telling you, Johnny Mac, as sure as I'm sitting here, as sure as my name's McDonald and your name's McMullen, somebody's going to take him in the bottom of the first round.
That's
Mark
possible.
my words.
It is very possible. I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibility. That's the guy I want to take a flyer on in the 3rd round.
Right.
That's
He's
where
not
I'm
going to be there in the 3rd round.
Yeah, I agree with you. But if everybody gets smart, I'll take a flyer on him then and say, yeah, let's see what he can do. Let's bring him in. But there's no way I'm taking him in the 1st round. I mean, again, that's what Randy said. You go back to the film. Go back now. Go back and look at the film and see if you missed something, and if there's something maybe your coaches can tap into that. The good people at Western Michigan. He was I believe he started at Western Michigan and finished at Florida State. So he's the typical jumper at the college level now. Everybody does it, so nothing wrong with that. But yeah, I mean, I can't take him in the first round. Well, will I say 100%? No, there's tons of bad general managers. And then they might go, oh, he's so athletic. 6 out of 16, 20. Let's do it. Let's do it.
That's all I'm saying is there'll be one, because it only takes one. Takes one team. Even if the other 31 of the 32 have the John McMullen, Jody McDonald, Randy Mueller take of, well, no, just go back and watch the tape. Use it as a guide to go back and see what you. There'll be one team that'll go, oh, we can't pass on this kid. There's no way we can pass. And they'll call his name out in the first round. So that's something we now already need to watch for come late April. We got months to go before the draft. But since they're all on display in this job interview that is the Combine in Indianapolis, that's what we're talking about today. McMullen and McDonald here with you on Bird 65. I see our Football Friday guy is already in the waiting room. We are ready to punch up. Paul Domowitch of the 33team.com and JAKIBSports.com. Domo joins us next here on Birds 365.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
EAGLES, Eagles.
Combine Football Friday here on Birds 365. You got John McMullen, Jody McDonald, and the well-clad Paul Domowitch. Kansas City Red Chief. Did Andy Reid send that shirt to you directly? Did get a little swag after the Super Bowls? I got a Chiefs logo, and it looks like I got Dolphin logo on the side there. Where'd you get that shirt down?
Strictly a Tommy Bahama model.
Okay, all right. I thought maybe you were showing your Andy Reid love. How many times during your illustrious career did you have to go out and cover the Combine?
Except for the year that I missed. No, actually, I didn't miss it for that fractured hip. Since 86, probably every one but one or two.
Yeah, you were there. Where was it? You weren't in New Orleans, were you?
No, I first time I went, it was the first year they had it in Indy. I actually went there to do a story on Paul Palmer, who was
Nice.
Yeah.
Who was at the combine, and I was the only one there. Nobody thought of covering this thing at that point. And next year I started going, and every year after that.
Those were the days. Did you call up the PR people and they go, "What? You want to come?" Yeah, feel free.
I loved Indy.
Yeah, well, it's great. It's from
it's
how easy it is, and you never have to go outside if it is cold. Evidently, it was nice this year. They had some 70-degree days. We'll see. It'll change by the time this thing is over. But it's amazing how it's, and that's what the NFL does so great. I mean, they've turned this into an event.
Yeah.
But I think it's, as they turned it into a TV event, it's become less important for the teams. Do you get that sense?
Yeah, I think so, except for the medicals and the interviews. Everything else they can get by watching tape. So I don't, you're right. I'm surprised it took so long for it to become a television event. I think I told you guys last week how hard the people that were running it for the league turned it into initially didn't want the media anywhere close to it or fans.
Yeah.
Then at some point they said, hey, this could be a great, the NFL Network came over around 2002.
Yeah.
We need programming. Hey, let's open it up. And that's what they did. But I don't think it's nearly as important as it once was. I'd hate to see it go to LA, which, they badly seem to want to do. But as coaches and executives have said, it would just be a nightmare in LA. I mean, you got everything close by in Indy. You got, the medicals, then they get right over to the stadium. You do it in LA, you're waiting in traffic.
It's a nightmare. I stayed when I went out this year for the Eagles-Rams game. I stayed, I think, 2 miles away, and it took me 45 minutes to get there. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Exaggerating a little bit, but yeah, LA would be a disaster. Although I would love to see it from this perspective, Damo. I still don't think Sean McVay would cross the
Exactly.
street.
He's not gonna be there. They put it in LA, you still won't get McVay there. That's exactly what I was gonna say, John.
Surfing.
Yeah.
Damo, you predated something that John and I just brought up, which was 30 years in the making, which is the selection of Mike McMullen, which was the mid-90s. And you go back certainly further than that. So you've seen different iterations of the Philadelphia Eagles, from pre-Jeff Lurie to Jeff Lurie to the many different coaches they've had. And certainly when there are those big changes in the organization, their philosophy and way of doing things is, of course, going to change. But I need you to give me just an Eagle grade in comparison to the other teams in the National Football League from when you started late 80s till today. Did the Eagles handle the combine well? Have they handled the combine well? Was there a group that you thought handled it better than maybe present day, or those that you went back when you're there by yourself, had the run of the place in 1986? How would you say the Eagles have handled the combine?
Overall, I think they have found the proper middle ground as far as using it as a tool, but not over relying on it. I mean, there have been exceptions. I mean, all we got to do is look at Davion Taylor a few years ago when that draft, that preparation, how he kind of got it became an analytics thing. He just decided we need to increase our speed. Davion Taylor had never played high school ball. He had
played one game, Damo. One game.
He had played junior college ball before playing 1 year at Colorado. He ran the 4. What did he run, John? 4.5.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah, I think it was better than that. Yeah.
And they took him in the 3rd round, and surprise, he couldn't play.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they've managed to balance what they see there and what they would see on film. I
tried to uncover how he was a Seventh-day Adventist, and maybe that's why I took him. He ran, Damo, a 4.39. That's why they took him.
That's right. Yeah.
4.39.
Wow.
Yeah. But you know what? I was telling this because we were talking about Braden Fisk, the defensive tackle from Florida State, who just tested off the charts yesterday. 6th out of 1,620 dating back to 1987. There's this guy who does Keith Lee Platt, who sort of looks at it and gives them a score. And it's interesting. So he was off the charts. And I said, and he's probably going to be a second-round pick. Now, if something happens because he's undersized, he's got small arms, we know how that works, and he falls to the Eagles in the 3rd round, I'm like, yeah, I'll take a shot at him. So I don't have a problem with the Eagles taking a shot at Davion Taylor as much as, if you go back in the day, and it's unfair because better than most, Mike McMullen was a pretty good player.
Yeah.
Pretty solid player. Now, did he live up to his draft status? No, but people act like he was a bust. He wasn't a bust.
No.
At the top of the draft, though, my point, sorry, Dama, you can't reach at the top because you got to find a contributor. You can take a 3rd round, 4th round, all day. Take a shot. But you can't do it at the top of the draft. Agree or disagree?
Agree. Yeah, definitely agree. We saw that a few years back with Sidney Brown when talent-wise seemed to have everything, but it was hurt. So he flew back. He was supposed to be one of the best corners in the draft. Or Sidney
Jones.
They got him in the 1st round, thought they had struck oil. They obviously didn't.
They got him in the 2nd round. So the whole thing with Sidney Jones was he was supposed to be like a top 15 pick somewhere.
Right. Down to the 2nd round.
And he tore his Achilles at his pro day.
Yeah.
Which, obviously the timing, he's not going to be, he essentially had the redshirt. I think he made it back in week 17, his rookie season, which was meaningless. But yeah, he just was never healthy. You never know with these injuries. And that's the thing. Yeah. The medical test just today came across, Ian Rappaport just tweeted that, let me get it up. Kool-Aid McKinstry, who's a potential pick for the Eagles at 22nd overall, has a Jones fracture in his right foot. Ooh. So he won't work out in Indy. Then he's got to get it fixed. Who knows if it'll be 100%, but that's the important part. So you might be able to cross Kool-Aid McKinstry off at 22nd because the Eagles want to deal with that type of injury.
Or, what Howie tends to do with injured players like that is, and he's not the only one, you calculate how far back it's prudent to take a guy like that. You assume he's going to miss his rookie season, but if your doctors tell you he'll make a full recovery, is it worth taking him a round later or 2 rounds later? Those are the calculations teams have to make.
And that's what they did with Sidney, and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
So let me ask you a medical question, Damo. The supposed overall number 1 pick, Caleb Williams, is not going to allow anyone to examine him in Indianapolis.
That's crazy, by the way.
First player ever in recorded history to say, in the comment, gonna let go, don't work out. They'll have meetings, but you're not getting me on the field. Don't want to hurt my stock at all. No one has ever not said, go ahead and poke and prod, do whatever you want. And we're led to believe that Caleb Williams is health-free. He's not hiding an injury. And it's kind of I'm Caleb Williams. I'll dictate all the terms to you. Do you think this could cost him the number 1 draft status?
I don't think so. And I blame it on his agent. The agents are the ones that are telling
he doesn't have an agent. He's there by himself. He's got a team. He's got a team of guys.
He's got a team. That's he paid $11 million. He's got a whole team.
That's even worse because you got a whole bunch of people telling you, they're gonna make stuff up and to hurt your stock. And so, regardless, he doesn't have to lift his arm there, get checked out by anybody. He's going to be the first pick in the draft.
I got to be honest. If I'm Ryan Poles, it gives me pause. I want to talk to him about it. I want to know what's behind it. Because if it's, and everything depends on evaluation. Yeah. If you think he's lights out the best player, you're going to take him. But if you think Drake May is close, I mean, it might ship for me. We had Randy Mueller on yesterday, Dama. He was talking about Marvin Harrison. What did Marvin not want to do, Jody? Do you remember?
Marvin's not working out.
He's not working out.
He's not working out.
He's not working out.
He's
not working out at his pro day.
He's
right?
not doing combine drills.
He's not running at all.
No,
he said,
he's just
it's like a
Seinfeld
Seinfeld. It's like a Seinfeld episode. I choose not to run.
Yeah.
And Randy's like, there's so many good receivers. I might think about the kid from Washington, Neighbors from LSU. You know, it could shift. Not like he's going to drop Williams, Harrison. They're not going to drop Barr.
Yeah.
But they might drop a spot or two.
Yeah, but, you know, it's funny. I was talking to Bill Polian the other day, and Polian was one of the most he blamed everything on agents and used to always say these guys are going to fall, and they never did. And I asked him about it, you know, what is his thoughts on it now. And, you know, he said, as long as you get them in a private workout, you know, you're okay. So, I mean, that's what it's come down to. They can refuse to work out there. They can, in Indy, they can refuse to work out at their pro day, as long as they agree to work out for you and whatever other teams are possibly going to take him at second or wherever Marvin's supposed to go. He's not going to drop. So we'll see.
Damo, I'm 99% sure I asked you about this last week, but I'm asking about it every week up until something happens. This week, a couple of good reporters came out and said several teams have already met with Hassan Reddick because the Eagles gave him permission to go out and seek a trade. So either you're his agent. I've talked to several teams around the league. The reporting did not say anything is imminent, but just the fact that they're talking says something. And it certainly sends my antenna up that, oh man, this could really happen. Hassan Reddick could get traded. I was hoping it was just check the market, come back down to earth. Hassan was asking for an overly outrageous number and they got something done. Now I'm a little bit worried. Can the Eagles really afford to trade Hassan Reddick?
Well, first of all, I mean, the reports I saw said several teams are interested in him, which, I mean, you don't have to, I mean, you know, the kid that interviewed players at the Super Bowl could have said that. I mean, of course, there's teams interested.
He was good, by the way. Did you like that kid?
I did.
He was very good.
He's gonna be doing your job in a little bit.
Yes, sir.
But you know, I mean, there's obviously this is one of the best pass rushers in the league. Everybody's interested in him.
Yeah.
Are they willing to pay him the kind of money he wants? Is the question. They may be calling his agent and asking what it's going to take. I mean, you got to. I'm trying to figure out where the Eagles are right now as far as. I mean, I don't think they believe next year is a Super Bowl year deep down. I think they're taking a step backwards in this process to take.
All right, wait. Time out. I got to ask you about that. They don't believe they're really a Super Bowl team. Who's having that conversation, and what does it sound like? Jeffrey and Howie, is Nick involved in that? That we're not really a Super Bowl team? There
are some years you know we can go for it this year. We're all in. You know, if we play up to our level and don't have injuries, we're going to be in the Super Bowl. And there have been years like that where they believe that. There are other years where it's
last year.
There are other years where we can get in the hunt. You know, we can stay. If we get to the playoffs, anything can happen. That's probably going to be the way they look at this year. Because, I mean, they have to completely rebuild that defense, Jody. You know, I don't see how you can look at that defense right now. And you're probably saying, well, if that defense is so bad, why are they going to let Hassan Reddick walk out the door? I think because they're looking 2 and 3 years down the road here when, you know, when they can't afford to pay Hassan what he wants in 3 years.
When they can't afford to pay A.J. Brown, what he's going to want in 2 or 3 years.
Exactly. And there's at some point, or even with the cap going up $30 million a year like it did, you know, you got to make some hard choices. I don't know that that's a hard choice I want to make because I'm not sure Josh Sweat's ever going to rise to the level they think he is, or Nolan Smith. But as we saw earlier in the combine this week, you know, you kind of saw how he chastised indirectly his coach for not playing Nolan Smith enough.
Yeah, young players. And by the way, Nick, that was the one disconnect. Nick talked after Howie, and Nick was like, "Oh, I'm playing the best players."
Yeah, well, that's a coach's. I mean, a
Yeah.
coach is playing for his job.
Yeah.
You know, Howie's playing for the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So there's always that disconnect between a coach and a GM that you try to minimize. But you know, it's a hard decision for them. I mean, he's only what, 29?
Yeah, it's going to be 30.
I think Reddick's still got another
30.
Another good contract, you know, another rich contract in him before he starts to be on the descent. So I mean, I wouldn't let him walk, but especially considering how important the front four is to both Vic's defense and to their whole philosophy. So, I mean, I'm not so sure that it's going to happen. I think ultimately he'll be around for at least another year, but who knows? You know, I've been wrong before.
Yeah, the last few times the Eagles have done this, it's worked out for them. They did it with Slay last year, and Slay came back when Drew Rosenhaus went out and looked and said, "Man, you know."
Yeah, it's kind of like go find out what you're worth, and then we'll talk.
Yeah.
So,
and the hope is because he's undersized, and some teams will say, you know, we love you, but as Damo said, yeah, you're a great pass rusher, but 200, you don't hold up well in the run game, and yada, yada, yada. And maybe if the number comes down from 25 million to say 21 million, all of a sudden the Eagles are like, yeah, we love you. Come back. It might work out still.
And he's got, you know, with just 1 year left, I mean, there's a lot of flexibility to structure a short-term deal. Whether that's the question. Is he interested in that? Or is he looking for his next contract to be a huge payday? We'll see.
My guess is somewhere in the middle. I don't think he's doing a 1 year restructure just to help out the Eagles, but I don't think he's getting 5 years tacked on either. And you both mentioned the disconnect between Howie and Sirianni. When Sirianni said what he did, I was both excited by it, and I was also like scratching my head about it. I was scratching my head in that I disagreed with his stance. Didn't you learn? You watch your boy JG have Nakobe Dean sit on a bench all year long when you're up by 2 touchdowns in the second half, and he comes into this year with what, 18 snaps or something ridiculous like that. Johnny had played for
I think it was 47.
47. That felt like 18 over 7 games. So 3 snaps a game. Good job there, Coach. So I disagreed with his overall point that he overstated it. But here's what I liked about it. Nick Sirianni's on the hot seat. Nobody's going to argue that. Coming into the season, he might be on the hottest seat of everybody in the National Football League. And you always get nervous when a coach is on a hot seat because you think he's more worried about himself than he is about the football team. Right. Nick kind of said, "No, I'm here to win football games." That's good. That's what you want out of your coach. If he's coaching your team, you don't want him worried about, what do I have to do to make sure I don't get fired? That's a guaranteed way to lose. So he took a kind of avant-garde, no, I'm here to win football games type attitude, which I liked. So I kind of liked it and hated it at the same time. I didn't know how to feel about it because, you're going up the wrong hill. He's going to die on the wrong hill, but I like the fact that he's willing to die on a hill for the Eagles.
Yeah, and we'll see if he follows through on that.
Yeah, but he is coaching for his job.
Yeah,
it's best to win games, and he's probably going to lean on the best player, who he thinks is the best player. We got to see. It's interesting. It is it's tougher than people think because, if you go back to the year prior, TJ and Kaiser were playing well. You're winning games. They're healthy. Why are you going to take them off the field? And then you're trying to serve 2 masters, but you're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. And Jody and I both think they should have gotten Nakobe Dean, maybe a series here or there, especially, Kaiser White, wasn't going to be long-term. They evidently knew TJ wasn't going to be long-term. So you can give them a series here or there. But I get why they didn't, too. And this year we got to see Sidney Brown due to injury. It wasn't great. He's playing out of position. We got to see Keely Ringo late because of injuries and things of that nature and ineffectiveness. wasn't great. I saw some signs. Excited about him, but it is really tough to do. You know, guys aren't ready. Guys aren't ready.
Yeah.
So why are you putting them out there?
Especially I mean, you look at their season last season. A lot of close games. I mean, a lot of routes where you could empty the bench.
I got much less of a problem with it this year than the year before when they had games well in hand and still trotted out their starters who, as John correctly points out, neither of which were back here and both took their linebacking talents elsewhere. So, yeah, and that's on Gannon. Shame on Gannon for that. I want to get your take on this. It was something we discussed early in the week. 3 Eagle all-timers going to be in the Eagles Wall of Fame. I think at least one of them's going to be in the National Football League Hall of Fame, and champions here in Philadelphia. Jason Kelce, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox. Worst case scenario is, as Howie Roseman, that's what we talked about on Tuesday because Howie mentioned it on Monday. He said, we don't want to see them in another team's uniform. Give me the percentage chance on each of the 3 that they're playing in the National Football League next year for someone not named the Philadelphia Eagles. Kelce, BG, Cox. Percentage chance of playing for somebody else.
Kelce's, I'd say 10%. I mean, I just don't think he's coming back. It doesn't make any. I mean, we've heard, you know, he's bared his soul on Netflix, or Amazon, in that documentary and in interviews because he's so candid and honest as far as wanting another life after football. I mean, where he wants everything, you know, his knees to work and his brain to work. And so, you know, if this were a year where they were coming off the Super Bowl and lost, like if this were last year and he had to make this year's decision, I'd say he might be back because he wants to win one more Super Bowl. That's not going to happen. Deep down, he knows it's not going to happen. Go out now and you know, spend time with your family. And I think that's what's going to happen. The other 2, I think, is 100%. They're both back. I don't know where. I think, you know, it sounds like Howie's left the door open to both of them if you know, if they want to come back at a reasonable you know, senior rate. So and I've come around to the thinking that, you know, if it's not costing you a lot of cap room, bring them back. I mean, they're great from a leadership standpoint. Fletcher's still got a lot left in him, surprisingly. You know, I don't know that Brandon does, but Brandon gives you that leadership. So I think both of them will be in this league next year. And I think
you gave me a great answer. You didn't come close to answering my question. Maybe I asked it poorly. I'll try again. That they are somewhere else other than Philadelphia. They're playing in the league, but they're not playing for the Philadelphia Eagles. Give me a percentage chance. Kelce, Cox, Graham.
0% on Jason and Brandon, because I think Brandon either plays here or nowhere. Fletcher, somebody else gives him, thinks he's got a lot left and is willing to give him a pretty good paycheck. I'd say 50%.
50. Ooh, that's
big. I'm with you. Complete zeros for Kelce and BG. Complete zeros. With Fletch, I'm leaning towards Eagles or retirement. I think that's kind of the way Howie phrased it. But he's more difficult than Brandon. Brandon's easy to me. That might be easy as Howie's easiest job. He wants to play 15 years. He wants to finish with the Eagles. He'll play for $5 million. I think he was still darn effective in, limited reps, 20 reps. Still an effective player. Why not? That's easy. Fletcher, though, he can command, 10 million again, 10 million plus coming off last season. That's more difficult.
He would not be adverse to, I can see Fletcher sitting out training. If the Eagles didn't want to bring him back, didn't want to sign him at any price.
Yeah, he might go
week 2 and have somebody call him, and he'd be happy to show up on their doorstep.
Yeah, he might go the mercenary market. That limit, I'll just wait. I'm not going to training camp. Yeah, he might go that direction. That's a good point, Damo. But with Fletcher, the other part is you've been just piling up defensive tackles. At some point, Milton's got to play more. Jordan's got to play more. Jalen's got to play more. I mean, these are tough decisions, and Howie it's very rare when Howie gives you anything at the combine. He said essentially about defensive tackle, well, yeah, that's a position we're probably not looking at. I mean, let's be honest, because they have so many of them. Not even talking about Marlon Tui-Pelotu's. They think he's a solid player. They're loaded at defensive tackle. So do you really want to pay somebody Fletcher's age to take away snaps from the young guys? You want to build the foundation because, as you mentioned, Damo, it's about 2-3 years as well down the road.
If Carter and Davis don't play this year at a Pro Bowl level, they've got real problems. I mean, you don't need guys draft them that high, guys that are supposed to be dominant, difference-making players. And if Jordan Davis, if they both play like they did the second half of last year, there are going to be a lot of eyes on Howie.
I think Vic's got to build the whole foundation of his defense on those two guys.
Yeah,
that the whole thing. That's where I think he's got to build the defense on, and we'll see if it's successful. But they got to play. I mean, there's no other way to get around it. So that to me is why it's such a difficult decision for the Eagles and Howie Roseman. And I think Fletcher sees that. Fletcher was honest. He said they got a lot of young defensive tackles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think Fletcher, we're all on the same page as far as the 0-0 Graham and Kelsey thing. Damo, 50%, I'm not sure, but I think it is realistic he can go somewhere. I've had some people tell me Fletcher's either retiring or he's going to be an Eagle. I don't know that.
Yeah.
There might be a team out there, as both you guys just talking about. The Eagles aren't forced to bring Fletcher. It's not a desperate, dire need to bring Fletcher back because they've got 3 good young, including Milt Williams, tackles inside. So it's more of a leadership thing and a continuity thing than it is desperate to make sure his production stays in place. I don't think it's a lock that Fletcher's going to be back here. And if he ends up playing elsewhere, I'm going to hold Howie to that. Because he said it. He goes, the one thing we can't have is them in someone else's uniform. He kind of gave Fletcher leverage with that statement the other day at the combine, which I didn't quite figure.
Well, he'd have to take down the fathead in his office. I don't know if it's still there. Yeah,
that too.
Those fatheads are tough to get off and keep in.
Now, here's a question for both Paul and John. John, you might have a better grasp because you're there day in and day out now, but you know how it works for covering the team forever. I got a great Twitter question last night from
that's an oxymoron.
It really was. It was like, holy mackerel, I didn't even think about this. This is a good question. If Nolan Smith had an off-season procedure on his shoulder, as minimal or as massive as it had been, would we know about it? Are the Eagles obligated to give out information on injury stuff during the offseason? They're obligated in season. You got to tell people what's happening with players while the game's actually going on. But if he had some kind of procedure, aka surgery, after the season, would we not know?
We eventually would, because Rappaport and Schefter get everything from Howie. Like most, that's basically how it's working now in the NFL. And so it would come out at some point. There aren't very many surgeries that they don't report or find out about or are told about. So at some point we would find out.
Yeah, but to answer Jody's question, the Eagles are not forced to give injury updates in the offseason. Generally, the players, too, when we finally get to talk to Nolan, because the shoulder was an issue, they'll get asked that question.
But that'll be April. So
yeah, that'll be
March. March, I guess, is when they start making them available.
Now, Howie says he talks to nobody about the Philadelphia Eagles.
Right.
Usually it's agents. But I think there's a whole thing. Your buddy Mike Sealski came up with the term information broker, which is what the NFL has set up with the Rappaports and Schefters of the world. I always think when NFL media came in existence, they're like, give it to these guys. But I can't prove that.
Now,
Well, I mean, the NFL Network is owned by the NFL, so
yes, exactly.
I've always felt when Ian ever broke something, they should just put the NFL report in. You know?
Yes, exactly.
Let me posit a theory here, and realize I'm planting my tongue somewhat in my cheek. Fletcher Cox signs with the New York Giants this offseason, and then decides on the down low that he will give the game plan of the New York Giants to the Philadelphia Eagles, because it is now standard operating procedure as per McCall Hardman and the New York Jets this year. If you're not happy with you choose a team, you're not happy, you realize you made a mistake. Oh, let me see if I can sneak some info back to my old team, and meanwhile be saying to them, hey, get me back. Come on, do a deal before the trade deadline. I'm sorry, I was wrong. I should have never left. Is there a chance Fletcher assists the Eagles winning games this year without ever putting their uniform on?
He's a defensive lineman. Nobody on the field knows less about game planning.
Oh, that's a shot on goal.
Well,
I love it.
Maybe McCall Hardman, because none of it worked. The Eagles lost the game. So, yeah. I joked. I loved it because it's just another example of how overrated play calling, game planning is versus actual execution. So I know everybody rolls their eyes when coaches say we didn't execute well, we didn't do, but it really is. I mean,
thing.
Yeah,
it really is. Yeah, guys. Christian McCaffrey, that was a big thing when he went on the Manning cast, Tomo, and I have no idea. And he was calling out Eagles plays, and all Eagles fans were, not all, but I get in trouble when I say all, but a bunch were like, well, see, they're so simple. They even Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey's like the smartest guy in the world. He could pick out everybody's plays.
Yeah.
Luke Kuechly on the field, NFL films, you probably saw it over the years. He knew every stinking play.
Yeah.
Every stinking play. Doesn't matter if he executed.
I'm going to go back to Sam Mills.
Yeah, Sam. Bunch of them.
He taught people on his defense what to look for to know run pass, which way it's going, what gap. I mean, it's if you're the smart guys know what's happening.
Yes, exactly. It really is. By the way, did you guys see Slay and Steven Nelson? That another thing I would podcast talking about Eagles fans, that went over well.
Yeah.
Steve Nelson, by the way, he's been really solid for Houston over the past 2 seasons. He said on the podcast, now he's partially joking, but he said, I had to get out of here for my mental health. And I saw a couple, I'm not going to throw them under the bus, but someone mentioned, the Eagles should bring back Nelson Aguilar. Nelson Aguilar would rather set himself on fire than be back in Philadelphia. I think people don't realize we bring up Rasul Douglas a lot. Rasul doesn't want back in Philadelphia. Now, if he has no other options, yeah, maybe at that point, maybe anybody will come back. But if they have other options, they don't want part. Is this becoming a problem that people think it's so difficult to play here at times, certain players?
Judging from, I don't think so. I mean, it's not broad enough to or prevalent enough with the really good players to become a problem. But, I look
if you're good, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, I look at stuff like that and I'm just like, I feel very little sympathy for the Steven Nelsons of the world. He didn't play very good when he was here. He's turned it around there. So has Derek Barnett, who played great in Houston. I don't know why. He had the opportunity to play well here and didn't. But if you can't take criticism, the hell with you. I mean, I don't know.
And Nelson, I would get. Aguilar, I'd get. The two names you threw out, John, because he heard it a lot. He kind of deserved it. I didn't think it was over the top criticism or booing for him, but I'll at least acknowledge, he heard a lot of it. When was Rasul Butler booed off the field?
Rasul
Douglas. That I don't get.
He became, I always say, Rasul, I probably told Damo, when the first day I met Rasul Douglas, he was the most, engaging. He was just such a nice kid. He was so positive. He was polite. And by the time he left, he was so surly. I've never seen a complete 180. He was just miserable.
Yeah, a lot of that was him. I mean, he got when he had tasted a little bit of success, he suddenly got full of himself, and I mean, got arrogant, and I mean, he would get in. I mean, I had a few confrontations with him in the locker room.
Yeah,
I wasn't even talking to him. I was interviewing another player.
he would give crappy information to some report, and they're like, I'm like, oh, come on, Rasul.
Yeah, I remember him doing that to a young reporter.
I think it was EJ. I think it was EJ.
Bad information. Yeah. And then later was, you don't want to get in EJ's face, but
that surprised me. That I would suggest that Rasul needs to toughen up the skin a little bit, because there have been guys, and I've gotten in arguments about this on the radio. Ran him out of town. That's a phrase that is used, and it is overused.
Media.
It's just the media and the fan ran a guy out of town. I think it's inaccurate.
Yes,
29 out of 30 times. 1 out of 30. Yeah, you might have a leg to stand on.
Nelson might be the 1 out of 30. Okay. Yeah, because Nelson. But he didn't play well though. He played well in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
but I mean, he
became a better player after he left.
Yeah,
when he was here, he was afraid. He'd be playing so off receivers that it was scary. I mean, be 20 yards downfield, for God's sakes. I mean, he became, for whatever reason, he improved when he left, and that happens with a lot of players. The spotlight's off them, and they're not necessarily, there wasn't a big spotlight on Rasul, but the criticism's different in other towns. I mean, clearly Philadelphia's a little harder to play in than other towns because, I mean, we're more critical. And when I say we, I mean both fans, the talk shows, the media. You got
to toughen up. Yeah.
You go to Kansas City. You go to Kansas City and screw up. They're not going to criticize you for a long time.
It's tough town, and I would feel zero. I mean, zero for Darius Slay. They offered you to get out of town last year. They gave you the chance.
Oh,
the Eagles may have used it as a negotiating ploy, but if you wanted to get out, you get out. If it's so hard and so bad to play in Philadelphia, and they give you an exit, take it. You can't then come back and go, oh, my God, it's so hard to play in Philadelphia. You decided to come back. Shut up.
Slay did not say he wanted to leave Philadelphia. Slay is not in the category of Steve. Steve Nelson said I had to get out for mental health issues. All Slay said, Slay's very honest. Slay said, they're tough. You don't see it in other towns, but he said he loves Philadelphia. He doesn't want to leave, but he's also very good.
I always tell the Andy Reid story. I always used to ask Andy when he would take so much abuse from the fans, from the talk shows, why do you want to coach here? You can coach anywhere else.
Yeah.
He'd say, and he'd look at me and like I was an alien. He'd say, the passion, I love it. They care. And that's, every player that comes to this town in any sport, they should be given the quotes from Mike Schmidt and either deal with it or not deal with it. The whole agony of
agony of reading about it the next day. If anybody reads now,
you can't deal with that. Leave. Tell us now.
Still read
the thrill of victory and the agony of reading about it the next day.
Yes, people still do read, but they also watch YouTube, and we're thankful for that. We are thankful whenever Paul Domowitch chops in with us. Domo, thanks, buddy. Love the shirt today.
Thanks, Domo.
Can't wait for next week.
At P Domo on X, Twitter. Yeah, I don't know if you saw that, but it was interesting. Steve Nelson.
I didn't know. I was going off what you told me, and I thought you said that they were together bad-mouthing Philadelphia.
Well, no, Slay was on. It was a podcast, and somebody else was there. So I don't know who the third person was, but it was Steve Nelson, Darius Slay. There was a third person. I'm not sure who it was. And Slay was saying, what he always says. He says, they boo us if we're losing at halftime.
Shocking. No. Was Derek taken aback by the fact that they're booing when?
Well, no, he was just pointing out that you get a longer rope in most other cities, essentially is what he was saying. And then, which is true, completely true. He mentioned the chant of run the ball. They're trying to tell the offensive coordinator what to do, even if they lose yardage. So Slay's very truthful, but he also said he loves Billy, similar to what Dama loves the passion, doesn't want to go anywhere. Now, Nelson flat out said, and he chuckled when he said it, but he said, yeah, I had to get out of there for my mental health. And there are certain guys, and that's why I bring up, because Nelson Aguilar re-signed with Baltimore very early in the process, and I saw one person who shall remain nameless saying the Eagles should bring back Nelson Aguilar, and I'm like, I mean, there are certain guys that do not want to come back here, and Nelson would be at the top of the list. Now, he was treated very unfairly. If you think about the famous viral clip about the babies being thrown out,
Right.
And I mean, he was treated very, very unfairly. There are different levels, and I bring up Rasul because Rasul, the change from Rasul when he first got here to when he left, was striking from a personality standpoint. There are some guys like Jason Kelsey. Everyone says you should. He's the mayor of Philadelphia, right? He's also a Hall of Fame player. He's also produced at the highest level on the field. So one thing where I agree with players, there's this mentality that, if you just work hard, Philadelphia fans are going to love you. That's not true. That part's not true. If you just work hard and you're really good, they're going to love you. Now, I always use David Bell. You're a baseball guy, so you'll get that reference because he was a hustler. He was a guy who would run everything out. From a baseball standpoint, you could see how he would break his what on the field. Wasn't very good. Fans crapped on him. To use it probably a better for this show would be Nate Gary. I use him all the time. That guy just worked his ass off, but he wasn't very good.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, John, and you enlightened me to this well after the fact, that Gary was playing with a broken leg.
Sports hernia.
Sports hernia, excuse me. Yeah. He was severely hurt and played through it. And
the entire season, coaches loved him.
Coaches eventually told you about it, but loved him because of his courage, whatever. That story was not widely known.
No.
So I don't think he's an example of Philadelphia should have loved him because he played so hard.
No, I'm not saying they should have loved him.
Nobody knew. I didn't know. The first time you told me that, I said, what? Nate Gary played hurt all year long?
Yeah, but you're right. That story wasn't, although others reported it at the time, but when we did
while he was playing with it.
Well,
or after the fact.
No, it was after the fact.
That's what I mean.
When we found out. But no, I'm talking about the demonstrable nature of how he played and how he hustled and how he wasn't very good. I'm not trying to overstate. He wasn't very good. He's not a good NFL player. Coaching staff loved him. People said, "How is the coaching staff?" Now that I would say all the time because long before they told me about the injury, they would speak very highly of him. And people would lose their minds and blame it on me. And I'm just telling you what the coaches say. And they loved the guy. And part of it was because of how hard he worked and all that stuff. So I only bring up the point because that whole trope of if you just play hard, Philadelphia fans will no. If you just play hard and you're really good, and they're going to love you.
Here's where you and I will split roads. I don't think you have to be really good. You have to have a modicum of talent. You can't be bad and just play hard like Nate Gary. He's bad. It's really good for him to be chasing down a guy 5 yards from behind that he couldn't stay with to begin with because he wasn't that good a player. He was playing hurt, whatever reason. But, oh, man, he really tried to catch him from behind, a guy who just blew him away. Of course that's not going to work. Nobody's going to go, nice effort there, giving up that 75-yard touchdown. But you ran all the way to the end zone. Good job, Nate Gary. No, you have to have a level of competence.
Well,
if you have a level of competence and you play like your hair's on fire, yes, I think they'll love you in Philadelphia. You don't have to be Jason Kelsey, Hall of Fame level, to be beloved and play.
Well, you're probably right. You got to be at least a competent player. That's probably a better word to use. You got to reach a certain level. But when it is the only thing I'm trying to point out, and this is completely fair, I'm sorry to every fan out there. If you're gonna shit on people, they're not gonna like it. And whether they deserve it or not, so, they're not going to like it. So you could say it's unfair, but they're not going to have a good reflection of the city and the city's fans if you shit on people. Doesn't matter if they're good, bad, or indifferent. That's just human nature. People don't treat you well, you don't like them. So when some of these stories come out, it's not a surprise to me, and I'm not sure why it's a surprise to some people. And again, if you're expecting Nelson Aguilar to say, oh, he's improved, we could use a third receiver, come out, he's not coming back here unless he needs the money and has no other options.
Which from time to time that does happen. The guy's forced to come back. But if you do, when you sign, know full well what you're getting yourself into. That's my only point. Guys who come back and then go, I can't believe they're still as harsh as they were. What do you think? It was going to change? You took the money, you came back, deal with it, big guy. Birds fans, if we got an offer for you, here is your chance to save up to 40% on your car insurance right now from one of JAKIB Sports' great partners. Here's what you need to do. Call one of the managing partners, either Jim or Fran, and tell them you are a friend of both JAKIB Sports and Birds 365.
Hi, I'm Jim Muehlbronner, managing partner at Del Val Insurance Group. Give us a call. We're a local, knowledgeable agency, not an 800 number. Go Birds!
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Mac guys here on Birds 365. Gonna do something a little different coming up in the next 7-8 minutes. Greg Cody, hope you remember the name. He was on with us this year before the Dolphins-Eagles game. Longtime columnist, football guy for the Miami Herald, hosts his own YouTube show, The Greg Cody Show. Good dude, very insightful guy. Scheduled to join us coming up in the next 7 or 8 minutes. And I wanted to bring him on because I still don't think I know all the information about how the hell Vic Fangio became the defense coordinator for the Eagles. He was here. He was in the building. It looked like if Jonathan Gannon left, he'd be the guy who would just move right in. Oh, but then Gannon wasn't getting a job till after the Super Bowl ended. And by then, the Miami Dolphins had come knocking and told Vic Fangio, we'll make you the highest paid coordinator in all of football. And he said, okay, fine. I guess I'm going to South Beach. And he took the money and he ran down there and had a mixed bag of results year. And then before the season's over, boom, well, I'm going back to Philadelphia. I'm going to become the Eagles defense coordinator. They didn't have to trade to get him. He was under contract. And the Dolphins just said, yeah, if you want to go ahead. See you later. Bye. There's a whole bunch of stuff in there that doesn't.
I think you answered your own question in some ways.
Right. But you acknowledge, John, it doesn't happen this way in the national football.
Well, that's. Yeah, I mean, typically.
So that's why I want Greg Cody on, is to explain some of the stuff that just doesn't happen. The way that it happened doesn't happen in the National Football League.
A mutual parting of the ways.
That is very infrequent. Very infrequent. So
especially because, the Dolphins certainly didn't have a bad defense.
That's what I mean.
It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad, and they had a lot of injuries. Yeah, better. It certainly improved. Vic improved it, no question about that. They dealt with a ton of injuries late going into the playoffs. It was unbelievable, and they still were representative for long portions. So, yeah, it is strange. Other than and we'll hear what Greg has to say about it, because I'm interested from the Miami perspective, because I think it differs, even going all the way back to the Gannon stuff. I was talking to a couple people who cover the Dolphins at the time, and I'm like, because there's all this nonsense and the talk about how the timing and if the tampering didn't happen, Vic would have been here. No, the timing just didn't work out. So I asked a bunch of people who covered the Dolphins, and I said, was there any indication that Vic Fangio was going to back out after Gannon was clear and got the Arizona job? And they said, no, none, zero, not even talk. And you would think the Dolphins would have had a contingency in place and started calling around, thinking about DCs and all that kind of stuff. But and we'll should we pop up Greg now, Zander? Or are we going to go to break?
Well, it looks like we're popping up Greg right now. You can read him in the Miami Herald. You can catch his own show, The Greg Cody Show, on YouTube. He's joining us today on YouTube here on Birds 365. Greg Cody. Mr. Cody.
The Dan Lebitard show regular. I want to throw that in too, because Dan Lebitard does a tremendous.
Where do you put that on your list of resume topics? First or last? Because depending on how you look at it,
we got no audio with Greg. Greg, we got no audio if you can hear us. Let's see if you're muted. I don't know.
No, we're not hearing Greg.
All right, Zander, pop him back down. We'll see if we can figure out the audio issue. But yeah, I hope we can because, yeah, I'm very interested. This is an interesting topic on how Vic Fangio arrived in Philadelphia. And I think there's this presumption that the Eagles did the way the Eagles did, and it doesn't take into account the other end of it and the Miami end. And from my perspective, Miami sure didn't seem to be fighting to keep him.
Right.
So
there was the entrance of Vic Fangio and then the departure of Vic Fangio. And I got questions on both ends. I got no problem with the way the Dolphins spirited him out of Philadelphia here. He wasn't offered a job. He knew he was getting a job. So they offered him a big payday and they got him to go down there. And he said yes. And again, I'll give Vic Fangio a tip of the hat because, yeah, shortly thereafter, Gannon gets a job with Arizona. So I don't know.
And he could have Josh McDaniels them. I think that was the whole thing. And it's like, to Vic's credit, he was too much of a professional. Yeah.
John, you continue stealing what I want to say, John. Thank you very much. Yeah, that's why I tip my cap to him. Is some people would say, "Oh, he should just walked away." No, Josh McDaniels is a dick.
Yeah.
So Vic Fangio's not a dick. He didn't leave him sitting at the altar and say, "Oh, wait, I really want to be back in Philadelphia." No, he committed to the Dolphins and he stayed with the Dolphins for 1 year and then he got out of Dodge. All right, we're gonna give Greg another shot here. Hopefully, we've got the audio worked out. Mr. Cody, how are you?
Well, we still don't. We're still having audio issues.
Not sure what the problem is. We're not hearing you, Greg, if you're hearing us. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick time out. Zander, why don't you see if we can get Greg's audio up and running? We got to be able to hear him. He's a fine-looking gentleman, but we do want to hear what he has to say. We'll take a quick time out here on Birds 365, and hopefully when we come back, Greg Cody from the Miami Herald talk a little Vic Fangio here with us on Birds 365.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
EAGLES. Eagles.
All right, you got Mac and Mac. We are still efforting Greg Cody, who we got up on video, but couldn't for whatever reason.
Damn it. Greg's got his own podcast. He's got to know these audio issues.
Okay. Well, hopefully that's the case. And we get him up and the audio is good to go. He's on many different outlets. So he might be crossing his wires here a little bit. This is not the Dan Lebitard show. This is Birds 365. But we can play Dan Lebitard if he wants us to be flippant and wise guys. We'll give that a shot. Are you hearing us, Mr. Cody? Let's see if we can hear you.
It's just not our day, man. We can't. We still have no audio with Greg. That's damn it.
Don't know what the issue is there or the problem.
And he's
is
not
there.
muted, so it's not a muting issue.
How can you tell that?
Well, the little microphone, like if I mute myself, it shows up. There's a big X through it. There's no X through Greg's.
Yeah, you got a mic. I got a mic. Greg's got a mic. Yeah, I don't know what the issue is, but we'll continue to try and get him. But it has been funny, John. I don't know, as we went to break and Zander is giving his best effort to get him up and running. Of course, we've got people commenting here on the stream. Already got a couple of Fire Fangio salvos being shot into the.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Guy hasn't been here a day, and we've already got Fire Fangio as a potential headline.
Why would you want to fire Fangio so far? Why?
I can tell you. You want me to tell you?
The scheme?
They hate the scheme.
Yeah.
Hey, they're John McMullen.
Well, that's probably that. I'm
listening
probably
to you, JM, going, why the hell? Just because he's the creator of it, if the scheme don't work, why the hell would we want to continue using it?
Yeah, well, I'm probably partial. I don't like the scheme, but just because I don't like the scheme doesn't mean, there's a bunch of NFL coaches who love the scheme and they know more than me. Just because I hate the scheme, I wouldn't say fire Vic Fangio. I don't enjoy the scheme. That's all. Doesn't mean it can't work. If you have good players, it can work. If you have bad players, it's probably going to look pretty ugly at times. You're going to have miscommunication issues in the secondary because I think it's too complicated. So there's a bunch of things, but that doesn't mean I say fire Vic Fangio before he coaches one game. That's kind of silly.
No.
I also hated the scheme when Jonathan Gannon. Now everyone says I love JG. I do love JG personally. But I said, how many times did I say when he was here, Jody, I didn't like the scheme. I don't like the scheme. He did a great job with it though. Second-ranked defense.
The results were the results, and people, I don't think, gave him enough credit for the results. You and I both were on that exact same page. But if you don't like the scheme, you don't like the scheme, and more power to you. You didn't change. You didn't flop just because Gannon was having as much success as he did. It was successful while I was here, but then it wasn't. The design came in, so maybe it was just, and oh my God, will we tick off some Eagle fans here? Maybe Gannon was just that good. Nobody wants to say that. I shouldn't say nobody. You're right, John. A lot of people here in Philadelphia don't want to acknowledge that Jonathan Gannon did anything good while he was here.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
Maybe he was just that good a coordinator.
Yeah, well, he was good. There are very few defenses in Eagles history that were ranked second in the NFL, even if you go back to the glory days. You have to go back to Bud Carson to find a defense that finished better. Buddy never did. Jim Johnson never did. And that kind of rubs people the wrong way. So, do you want success or do you want philosophy? I'd rather have success, even though I didn't like the philosophy. And JG is a good coach, but, it's got more to do with personnel. And I never waver on that either. And the Eagles had tremendous personnel and they had a bunch of guys having big seasons, but he deserves credit for that, because if you go through and I don't want to re-legislate this, but if you go through that defense and see how many players on that defense had career years, well, you got to give some credit to the coaching staff. If you hate them that much and you want to give credit to Denard Wilson with the secondary players, or you want to give credit to Nick Rollis for the linebackers, have at it. But a bunch of players had career years, and that speaks highly of the coaching staff.
It should. And that was just a very good group of players. And as you mentioned, the talent level is all important. And we saw a big drop off in talent level at a couple different positions. Again, we got to bring Howie back into the conversation. He made the call that they were going to move on from the two linebackers they had. I think if they were willing to pay what those guys got in the open market, and we're relitigating did Edwards just go to Chicago the day he first had a chance because he lived to be a Chicago Bear player one? I don't know that. The only time I ever heard that, I've heard it being speculated. I heard Edwards say it on a Chicago radio station the day after he signed. So was I surprised to hear him say, I grew up a Bears fan, I always wanted to be a Bear player? No, time, place, situation kind of dictated it. He's on a Chicago radio station the day after he signed. Of course he's going to say, I always wanted to be a Bear. I would have liked to hear him say that before he actually put pen to paper.
Yeah, and I knew from talking to TJ over the years, I knew he grew up in the Chicago area. I knew he was a Bears fan when he was growing up. So I knew all that. And I said pretty consistently, maybe he just wanted to go home. I said, maybe he just wanted to go home. But later it came out that the Eagles never even made him an offer. So we don't know. He never had a decision. It's possible. But I don't have a problem, as you said, though, Jody, with both linebackers. I don't have a problem with moving on from one of them. I would have brought one back, and even if it was Kaiser, if TJ was too expensive, then I would have shifted gears and went to Kaiser White and tried to keep him. And then because you had Nakobe Dean waiting in the wings,
right,
and I have no problem with that philosophy, but we got to get him involved. But yeah, I think they should have brought one of them back. And I think they should have brought TJ back. And I think if they brought TJ back, even at that number, they would have been fine and he would have played well. And I think things would have been different. It wouldn't have been, I'm not trying to say they would have been great, but the communication would have been better. He would have handled things. He would have been the green dot. He's a very durable player, very smart player, would have got people lined up correctly. Still would have had some issues because the secondary, but it would have been better.
Let me ask you a question, because you and I are both on record as big TJ Edwards fans. I was not last year, the year before, about 3 or 4 games into the season, I suggested this is your prototypic Eagle contract extension guy. That this is where Howie does some of his best work before a guy ever gets to his end of his contract year, get an extension done, which they did like 3 weeks later. I don't know if Howie was listening to Birds 365 or what, but I absolutely suggested before they got it done. Now, all they did was pick up the last year of his option, but they did pick it up. They could have gotten a true extension to go years down the road done. They didn't. That's what I was kind of hoping for, but they did get at least the next year locked and in place. And you talked up TJ Edwards all along that, hey, all the guy does is make plays. He might not be the fastest. He might not be a combine warrior. He didn't get drafted, but since he got to Philadelphia as an undrafted free agent, all he did was improve, and became a well above average starting linebacker in the league. So you and I were both TJ Edwards fans. Subscribe to the theory that he desperately wanted to be a Chicago Bear and that the Eagles really had no chance, and that they may have had conversations with him and he was just like, yeah, I'm not signing anything till I become a free agent. See what the Bears say to me. Could they have kept Kaiser White, and would it have made a difference?
They could have, certainly. I mean, they didn't want to go to 2
Should
years
they?
on
Maybe I
yeah.
used the word well. Should they have kept Kaiser White?
I think
How
they
big a
should have.
difference would it have
I
made?
think they should have. It wouldn't have made a bigger difference than
Not as big as Edwards,
not
right?
as big as Edwards, but I think it would have helped to have that calming influence. And that's probably the way they would have wanted to go, to be honest, because they wanted Nakobe to be the middle linebacker, and that was TJ's role. And Kaiser, so you would have had Nakobe as the middle linebacker and Kaiser as the weak side linebacker. And that probably would have bit a little bit better, just to have that continuity coming back. But, you know, as Howie will point out, Zach Cunningham played pretty well. I think Howie thinks he played better than I did.
You and I both.
But, you know, I think it would have helped, but not to the degree of Edwards. You know, Edwards is an example. Like, you and I talk all the time about pedigree, and we've talked about it. And, you know, at some point, you got to move past it. And you know, development is something I think people don't give enough credence to. And by that, I mean, I wish TJ's another example of, I wish I was talking about Rasul Douglas. I wish people could have seen the change. Well, I wish they could have seen the change in TJ Edwards from a different perspective, from the guy who showed up to the guy who left, completely remade his body, and worked tirelessly to make himself a better player. And I always say, if I were the Eagles, I would have took pride. And I uncovered this undrafted kid who ran a 4.87, couldn't run. And I said, that's probably the only 4.87 TJ Edwards ever ran. But you have this narrative that he can't cover. He can't cover. He was, and I just pulled it up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15th best coverage linebacker in the NFL last year.
Last year with the
Bears. 15th best. Yet you have this narrative he can't cover. I got to cover.
He ran a 4.8, 5.87. Now, if you run that slow, you can't possibly cover anybody. How about you actually check some film and see if he can actually make a play during the game? Wouldn't you base your decision on whether he can cover or not more by whether he can actually cover in a game or by a stopwatch on combine?
Well, and think about how the Eagles play defense. They're a heavy zone defense. So you want a zone coverage linebacker. Can he run with Jahmyr Gibbs? No, nobody can. There's not a line. Fred Warner can't. Pick your poison. Nobody can run with Jahmyr Gibbs. Nobody can cover Christian McCaffrey. Nobody. Are you savvy enough to play zone at linebacker and play cover 2 and cover 4 and get deep in the seam and cover and do your job? One of the best coverage linebackers, I say it all the time, I've ever had the opportunity to cover was Jack Del Rio when he was a player. Couldn't run a lick, Jody, but he was so smart. He was always in the right spot. He always dropped. He always made it difficult for the quarterback. Turned into a Pro Bowl linebacker. Yeah, I mean, I would have taken pride in the guy, and I'm you know, I don't know. People can't get over this pedigree thing. Oh, he's undrafted. He can't run. He can't cover.
You mean like Brock Purdy?
Well, yeah. Here's TJ Edwards, since you got time. 2020 was the first year he got significant playing time. 19th out of 83 linebackers in the NFL per PFF. 2021, 10th out of 86. 2022, 6th out of 81, his last year in Philadelphia. Let me repeat that. 6th out of 81. And last season with a bad football team, 11th out of 82. That's 4 stinking years.
What more do you need to know?
That's 4 years.
Tell you how good a player TJ Edwards is. I don't know what does.
But that's a pretty big sample size. That's not just what. But he didn't get drafted. He can't run. Blah blah.
Yeah, and that's where judging this year's Eagles defense against last year's Eagles defense, I got to meet you on this at camp. You're down at camp every single day. I went to camp one day because WIP needed me to do the morning show with Joe DeCamera for John Ritchie. So we got you on the side to come on the air with us. And I was impressed by the guy. He was a straight shooter. The camera got his nose out of shape because he didn't give us in-depth answers. Who does? Who's tipping there, opening up the playbook for you to look at before the season starts? Just doesn't happen. The camera had these outrageous things. He's going to be able to pick his brain and know exactly what the Eagles are going to do all year on defense. I thought the guy was pretty good, actually. I thought he was a straight shooter. I thought he was candid. I was kind of rooting for him. I didn't know Sean Desai from a hole in the wall. I know what his career resume said. 1 year filling in as the DC for the Bears after Fangio left, and then going to Seattle and working under Pete Carroll, and then coming here. I was rooting for the guy. I liked the guy. I thought he was a good dude. I didn't know what kind of job he was going to do, but I was ready to give him the benefit of the doubt. He did not do well, and he got the worst bums treatment that anybody's gotten here in Philadelphia, and I don't know how long. Sirianni boots him out, if it was Sirianni, and I do believe it was more Sirianni than anything else. I'm still not. That might be one I'm going to take to my grave. Who really made the decision?
I said from early on. I'll tell you what, and it's not like Nick hasn't lied to me when we've talked about that, but he's a pretty stinking good liar. I'll tell you that. I firmly believe him that it was his decision, and I also say that's a fireable offense.
Yes.
I mean, I from and I've talked to more people about it than Nick as well. From everything I get, it was his decision. Everything.
All right. Here's a great opinion question for you, John. From Desai into Matt Patricia, the Eagles defensive coordinator. If you want to include the D-backs coach in this conversation and his effect, please do so. James Bradbury fell off a cliff this year. He went from second team All-Pro to one of the worst cornerbacks in the National Football League. The age says you have to at least consider the fact that maybe that lost step because of another year on the calendar had that big effect. Or you can factor in how much you think it should be factored in. He was poorly coached. He was asked to do things he shouldn't be asked to do on both the coordinators and or the secondary coach, positional coach's effect. How much you putting on coaches? How much you putting on? Yeah, the guy just got real old real fast.
I put a lot on the coaches from the perspective of putting him in positions that you should have known he shouldn't succeed at, namely the slot, but even flipping sides later in the season when he had already was having a poor season, I think was a mistake. On the other hand, I'm not going to say is poor coaching. I mean, James has been around a long time. That's the strength of James Bradbury. I just talked about Jack Del Rio, same thing. TJ Edwards, same thing. He's a smart player. He coaches it. By this point, he knows how to play. He knows how to play. So, that it's certainly possible that he just lost 2 steps, I think, as Mike Gill said earlier in the week, and he's got nothing left. That's a possibility that you have to acknowledge that's a possibility.
Yep.
I don't think that's the case, and we're going to see with Vic Fangio, and maybe we don't see because maybe Howie moves on. Howie sort of said he's under contract, he's in the plans, but when GMs say that, that's it might be the kiss of death. So if they draft, and I think it might be a situation where if they find something better, for instance, Quinyon Mitchell, we're talking about the draft, if they're able to target him, trade up, get him, Bradbury's probably going to gone. Post June 1st cut, probably gone. If you can't get better, run it back, give it a shot, because this guy's a great zone corner and you're going to play a bunch of zones. So in theory, the fact that he can't run like Quinyon Mitchell or a younger quarterback or even Kaylee Ringo on the team shouldn't be as much of an issue here, especially with Vic Fangio, as maybe some other schemes like Steve Spagnuolo or Wink Martindale in Michigan, or we'll see how that works out with Wink in Michigan, or Brian Flores, or guys who are going to, bring the house all the time. Shouldn't be as important. So I think he could have a bounce back season.
It's going to be a great chess match, behind the scenes matchup next year in college football. Wink Martindale against Chip Kelly. Think about that. I mean, we're used to seeing that on a National Football League game field on Sunday. Michigan against Ohio State. Wink Martindale again. If I had told you that was going to be the case in November, Michigan Ohio State could be decided next year by Wink Martindale against Chip Kelly.
Well,
Tony, what the frig have you been drinking?
We talked a lot about how many college coaches are trying to get to the NFL because of the shifts in how things are done at the college level. I can't believe Wink Martindale is going to be long for Michigan. I think that's going to be a 1-year pit stop. Now, at his age, it might be more difficult to get back in the league. But I think I don't think he wanted to go to college. And certainly we know Chip Kelly didn't want to stay in college. He wanted
he
wanted
tried. He interviewed everywhere. He called every number that he had in his Rolodex to try and get the hell out of UCLA and become an OC in the NFL.
Yeah. So, but it's one of those things. But it is going to be interesting. It is going to make Michigan, Ohio State fun, at least for the short term. But I think both of those guys want to get back in the NFL as quickly as possible. Oh, I wanted to bring this up, Jody. Tom Pelissero, and since we didn't get Greg Cody on, a shame, because I wanted to talk to Greg. But I did want to bring up, because Tom reported on some of the competition committee stuff that we were talking about earlier in the week. And he came up with 2 interesting nuggets. There's more than that. Special teams coordinators are going to meet Saturday and try to craft a modified kickoff rule, which I hope they come up with something, because it's a waste of time at this stage. But the 2 things we talked. By the way,
can I just jump in and interrupt, John? I'll let you finish what you're going to say. I don't believe it for a millisecond. I think this is a CYA, show that you care. There's a portion of fans out there who think that the removal of the kickoff is the downfall of the National Football League. You took out the so they need to do something that they care, and they tried. Not happening. Unless they can come up with some way that is injury proof, they're not doing it. The research, the analytics say concussions happen on kickoffs. They lost tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in concussion lawsuits. Not happening. The kickoff, my prediction, kickoff.
Yeah, then you know what? Then just drop it. Get it out of the game. Just start it to 25 or do whatever. I mean, it is a waste.
That would be the logical thing to do. You know why they haven't done that? Because there is a portion of the fans who say, how dare you take the kickoff away from it? It's the most exciting play. Gale Sayers, it just put them in the Hall of Fame.
Well, one of the things is, and I'll say this the NFL talks about these studies they do. They never give us the studies. And I'll even say, because this one supports me, we were talking about the touchback rule, fumbling through the end zone. Now you're on one side, I'm on the other side. So what Tom said, but I'll acknowledge this, it only happened 4 times in over 40,000 offensive snaps last season. And the league feels it's a product of poor technique. So it completely bolsters my argument. But I'll also say, and it's easy. That's easier. So that's a little bit different than kickoff and injury rates, because you can go through every play And I believe them. It only happened 4 times. But I'm just saying they never give the background information. They just say it, and you're supposed to accept it. And the second one was, trying to pull it back up, the tush push, which obviously we've talked.
Yeah, that was Troy Vincent.
Yeah,
Troy Vincent came out and said that who was it who reported that Roger Goodell was working behind the scenes to try and get the tush push?
I think that was Pro Football Talk, but I'm not positive. There were 200.
Troy Vincent crapped on that and said there's no opposition to the tush push.
No, there were 299 sneaks last season, most in modern NFL history, and success rates were actually slightly higher without a push. So for the rest of the league, and you saw it, other teams doing it weren't successful. The rest of the teams were more successful with a regular quarterback sneak than a tush push. When they tush pushed it, it didn't work because they were bad at it, which bolsters the Eagles' opinion.
And make sure you say teams other than the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yes.
Because we know how good the Eagles were. The other teams who tried to copycat the tush push weren't effective in general, and they sure as hell weren't as effective as the Philadelphia Eagles.
And that's the point. The league as a whole, though, so as you include the Eagles, who were very successful with it, the league as a whole, so all 32 teams were more successful with quarterback sneaks, conventional quarterback sneaks, than tush push quarterback sneaks. And yes, the Eagles elevated that, but it still went to the other way. So yeah, I think what it says is, all right, people get emotional. That was my argument with the touchback thing. When their team makes a bad play, they get emotional. Stop legislating over emotion. That's my point. The tush push, the Eagles are good at it. Everybody else stunk at it. So, it ain't easy just because you think it's easy when it comes to the tush push. So, but the NFL will never learn. They will never learn. They take too much in the moment when there's something happening. And the best example of this is overtime, the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes thing. They lose their minds. It's like, it's one game. Yeah, it's a big game. It's a big spot. You don't have to upset the whole landscape because of emotion in the moment. That's my thought.
That I will agree with you on. They can be classic overreactors. All right, quickie timeout. Come back. We'll put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Philadelphia fans, we're cut from a different cloth. Born into a brotherhood and bonded to our team for life. We believe anything is possible because we've witnessed the impossible. While we may be from different neighborhoods, come Sunday, we are one, and we will be heard. Pondley Hockey, official partner of the Philadelphia Eagles.
Underdog Fantasy is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and certainly the easiest when you're watching the NBA. And the NBA playoffs are almost here, and you can win money making picks. What are you waiting for? Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com and use the promo code WIN. An Underdog will double your first deposit up to $100. That's UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN. Get ready for the NBA and get ready for the NBA playoffs. Go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Use the promo code WIN.
Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
EAGLES. Eagles.
All right, Mac and Mac guys here on Birds 365. Good week. Enjoy all your combine watching over the weekend. Pay strict attention when the corners play. And John gave us breaking news earlier, in case you weren't listening earlier. Kool-Aid McKinstry, who a lot of people have suggested could very well be the Eagles pick at 22. I'm one of them. I think he is value at that point. I think he's that good a player. I think cornerback is a position of need for the Eagles. So a lot of boxes get checked for Kool-Aid McKinstry to be an Eagle. Until we found out today that he's got what's the injury? The foot injury?
A Jones fracture in his foot. Now, evidently plans to work out at his pro day, which is, I think, March 20th, Alabama's pro day. And then he's going to have surgery after his pro day.
Now, is that a smart move or is that
I don't think so.
I don't either. If I'm a team, I don't care how good he looks at his pro day, and then he's going to have surgery, and the surgery might not go well, and
that might change.
You got an injured player.
Those are early reports. I mean, somebody might get to him and say, or get to his representative and say, "This is probably not a good idea.
You're better off having
get it done
first." Yeah,
let's get it done. That's the way I would want to handle it.
Yep.
But yeah, I can't take that kid at 22nd overall now, bottom line. So, then you start talking about second round. If he starts balling a little bit, then maybe it's good value for the Eagles at 50 and 53. But yeah, things change all the time, man, all the time.
Cornerbacks are going to be worth watching this week. And here's the one thing. And I'll watch way too much. I got the NFL Network on right now on my TV.
I'm like Sean McVay. Just give me the data, baby. Give me the data afterward.
Here's where Sean McVay is missing out and all the other teams that don't show up. You miss out on the misinformation, too, because we know what it's like the 2 weeks leading up to the draft. Everybody's lying. Everybody wants to get a story out there to make people believe something so that they might be able to benefit. It just one lie after the other. Sometimes it starts as early as the combine. So I'm going to ask Johnny Mac to put the lie detector on this one. The general manager of the Pittsburgh Steelers says they're completely good with Kenny Pickett going forward as their NFL starting quarterback.
Yeah,
you
that's
buying, or is that misdirection?
That's misdirection.
Yeah, so
I mean,
do I.
how could you be completely happy, even if they're now, if they can't find an upgrade and say, all right, we're willing to go forward with Kent, we're not giving up on him. I can buy that, but to be completely happy, come on, no, I'm not buying that.
That's the same thing I saw when I read that story there. So whoa. I've watched Kenny Pickett play, and I thought he was the first draftable quarterback in his draft. Very weak class. And he did go in the first round because it was a very weak class. And he deserved to go in the first round for a team that was desperate, Pittsburgh. And he's had 2 mediocre years. He has done nothing to jump off the page to go, all right, well, he's getting better at this. He does this well. He's just middle of the road. That's what he is. And it's not 1 year, it's 2 years.
That was a bad draft, as you mentioned, for quarterbacks. And he was the first quarterback taken. You rarely see that anymore. But think about that 2021 draft, Jody. I know we got to go, but Trevor Lawrence 1 overall. All right, he's been fine, but not as good as most of us thought.
Yep.
Zach Wilson, number 2 overall. He got permission to seek a trade. Complete
bust. Let me emphasize this word. Bust.
Trey Lance.
He's a bust.
Trey Lance at number 3 overall. He's already moved on. Justin Fields, number 11. He's gonna get traded. Mac Jones at number 15. You had 5 quarterbacks in the top 15. The only one starting for his team probably next season is going to be Trevor Lawrence. Yeah.
But Justin Fields could land somewhere and actually do well by him. We shall see how that plays out. But hey, don't worry, Steeler fans, you got Kenny Pickett. Or at least that's what they're trying to make you believe. J-Mac, good week. I say we do it again next week. You in?
Let's do it.
You'll get Mac and Mac right back here in 2 and 2 days, that is, over the weekend. Enjoy the combine, everybody.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.